Girlfriend demands I abandon my pregnant daughter or she'll leave. I'm supporting my daughter and now the ultimatums hang in the air. I'm a 40-year-old guy, and I have an 18-year-old daughter with my ex-wife. Let's call her Maddie. We split up when she was just 7, and since then, I've had her with me 3 weekends a month. After the divorce, her mom moved out to a suburb nearly an hour from the city to be closer to her family and find a better school for Maddie. My job's in the city, and as the years went by, the long drives back and forth wore on Maddie. Eventually, she told me she was sick of all the driving and asked if we could work out a different arrangement. Even so, we talked on the phone almost every day, and I've done my best to be as present in her life as possible. Honestly, Maddie is an incredible kid, super smart, graduated high school with over a 4.0, tons of friends, and, up until recently, what seemed like a genuinely nice boyfriend. She's a little lost right now, still figuring out what she wants to do, and had already planned to take a gap year from her scholarship to work and pick up some community college classes while she thinks things over. I've also been in a relationship for about 2 years now with Vera, who's 37. She and Maddie really got along well, and Vera moved in with me just a few months ago. Her old roommate got married, rent became too much for her to afford alone, and since I was already thinking about proposing, it just felt right for us to move in together. My house is paid off, no mortgage, so Vera chips in by covering the electric and water while I handle the taxes, insurance, and remaining utilities. It's been nice just having someone around, especially since I hadn't dated much in the past few years with everything going on with Maddie and my job. Bonus, neither of us wants more kids, which makes things pretty easy and clear. And then, everything flipped upside down. Maddie told me she's pregnant, just 18, and her mom kicked her out over it. Her boyfriend has just 1 year left of nursing school and he's sharing a college apartment with a bunch of other guys, so he doesn't have space for her either. Naturally, she came to me. She found out about the pregnancy pretty late and is due in January. She and her boyfriend sat down and looked at every option before deciding to keep the baby. When she told me, it was with this meek little voice, asking if she could stay with me. Of course I said yes. I know she's worried about disappointing me, but she'll always be my little girl. If this is how her life is unfolding, I'm here to support her, though there are boundaries. I laid things out. I gladly babysit when she needs to work or go to class, but I'm not going to watch the baby so she can party or hang out with friends. She needs to keep up with school and her part-time job, and if her boyfriend bails, something I warned her happens even with the nicest guys, she's going to need to file for child support. I promised her I'd give her a grace period before and after the birth, but when she's recovered, she'll be expected to get back to doing chores on top of her new responsibilities as a mom. I had both her and her boyfriend think it over and spend the night mulling it through. They came back with thoughtful, mature responses and even put together a budget plan and a budget goal that genuinely impressed me. Now, the tiny room next to Maddie's, currently occupied by a treadmill that's been gathering dust forever, is destined to become the nursery. Throughout all of this, I made sure to keep Vera in the loop. I discussed everything with her before talking to Maddie or her boyfriend. Vera was aware that things might end up with all three of them, Maddie, baby, boyfriend, living here for a few years. She said she was supportive, or so I thought. But once Maddie officially moved in and we set the plan in motion, Vera did a total 180. She gave me an ultimatum: kick Maddie out because, in her words, she's an adult now, or she'd move out herself. I told her, plain and simple, that I'd never turn my daughter away, not now, not ever. Vera's still living here, but now she's avoiding both me and Maddie or being curt when she can't avoid us. The tension in the house is suffocating. Truthfully, I have no idea what she expects me to do. All I know is the stress and anxiety levels at home are off the charts, and none of us knows how or where this is going to end. Update 1. I have made it absolutely clear that all my daughter will owe to the baby is to help in genuine emergencies, and by emergencies, I truly mean situations that are both extreme and urgent, the kind where you'd probably call a very good neighbor for help. For example, if both she and her partner have work or class scheduled, and I happen to have plans, I will cancel my own plans if they can't find anyone else to step in. His parents don't live nearby, so that's not an option. But I won't ask my daughter to drop what she's doing. The only exception to this rule is if she herself offers to help, and to be honest, I have absolutely no expectation that she will want to. This way, I think I'm being entirely fair to everyone involved. Update 2. I asked Vera if we could have a real conversation, and she agreed. She actually managed something like an apology, saying she was overwhelmed because she'd assumed Maddie would either keep her existing custody schedule or maybe have a little more responsibility, but never full-time, especially not with a baby in the mix. Vera admitted she truly hadn't expected me to actually let Maddie live here with the baby. The best she could see herself agreeing to was Maddie and her boyfriend, I'll call him Doug, getting their own place once he started working full-time, with the promise that they'd never turn to her for help. Apparently, as long as she had light at the end of the tunnel, she thought she could handle it. I told her I understood her viewpoint, but what bothered me was her behavior, her anger, the coldness, just how out of line she'd been. I told her honestly that, after all of this, I couldn't see us making things work between us. That seemed to hit her out of nowhere. She got upset, seemed shocked, and then pretty mad. I said she could stay in the basement for a month while she found a new place, finished basement, walkout, kitchenette, plenty of space, and I'd pay her back for the bills she'd paid so far, $790, but I rounded it up to $1,000. She was barely speaking to me at that point, obviously unhappy and kind of falling apart, so I ended up calling Maddie and asking if she could stay with Doug for the night to give Vera some space. Vera told me, quite bluntly, to fuck off, but I was working from home the rest of the day, so I kept my distance as she hauled her things downstairs. That night she had work, and the next morning she let me know she'd be moving in with her friend instead. I offered to help, but she shut it down immediately, left her key on the counter, and was gone. I went ahead and changed the security code, but told her if she'd left anything behind to let me know so I could let her in to get it. I thought that was pretty much the end of the drama. Honestly, I felt sad but lighter, like I could breathe again. But then something strange started happening. Maddie's carnivorous plants, her pride and joy, started to rapidly die off over the next few days. Maddie noticed some of her concentrated fertilizer had gone missing, and since I'd installed rain barrels specifically for those plants, tap water kills them, it stood out. We've all been trained not to even touch or water them if Maddie's not around, so something felt wrong. Though we can't prove anything, it's hard not to suspect Vera had something to do with it. Maddie hasn't said the words, but I can tell she's thinking the same thing. I asked Maddie if she wanted me to confront Vera or do anything about it, and she said no. To make it worse, Vera texted her a nasty message blaming her for my being alone now, saying she hoped Maddie was happy. I urged Maddie to just block her. I can't tell if Maddie feels guilty or like she deserves it, but she refuses to let me buy her new plants. She only says she'll try to salvage what she can. If anyone out there knows a good place to get pitcher plants or pings in the US, let me know, because she's really torn up over it. Things are rough, but there's a silver lining. I have a female friend who's known Maddie forever, has her own kids, and took her out to lunch. Maddie had this plan: she'd just power through and take courses in the spring with a newborn in tow. She wouldn't take it from me, but my friend convinced her that one semester off wasn't going to ruin her life. I'm honestly grateful. Doug's parents and I had a serious talk. They're like me, not thrilled, but determined to be supportive and, yes, excited for the grandbaby. They're over an hour away, but I told them I have a spare room if they need to stay when they visit. As for Doug, he works part-time while he's in school, but I told him that finishing next semester absolutely has to be his priority. I let him know I'd support them financially and help more than I normally would with the baby next semester because, bottom line, the best future for my grandchild is with a dad who has his degree and a good job. Doug seemed to get it. He was genuinely thankful. Maybe he's not as much of a ding-dong as I first thought. So, the aftermath: I broke up with Vera and she's moved on to her friend's place. No definite proof, but Maddie's plants are dying and she's heartbroken over it. Doug's moving in so he can be a present parent. I'm definitely staying single for a while, but even though it's been one mess after another, I have hope that things will settle and get better from here. Update 3. The basement that I'd just cleared out became their space in a snap. We hauled the treadmill to the curb, set up the crib in the little room by Maddie's, and then realized we were going to be up and downstairs all night if we didn't make a plan. So Doug and I put together a second hand-me-down crib in the basement, one of those ones with the fixed sides that actually feel sturdy, and we put a rocking chair down there. I ran an extra smoke detector and baby monitor to the panel and put a whiteboard by the fridge with columns for feedings, diapers, meds if needed, and who's on duty. If there's one gift I have, it's building schedules when everything's chaotic. We got a car seat from Doug's coworker and I checked the expiration and recall number like a man possessed. We went to a fire station on Saturday because they still do inspections. The firefighter showed Doug how to do the seat belt lock off 3 times and then made Doug do it himself with the car parked going uphill. Doug did not love being corrected, but he took it seriously. As for Vera, I thought I was done thinking about her until my doorbell camera pinged me with an unrecognized face notification from 2 nights before I changed the code. The clip is short and grainy, but it's her at 2:41 a.m. hood up, walking around the side yard with what looks like a plastic jug. She never goes to the door. She disappears toward the rain barrels. That was the night before we noticed the first of Maddie's plants turning. I saved the clip. I told Maddie I had it and asked again if she wanted me to do anything. She said she didn't want a war, but she did want it on record in case anything else happened. We went down to the station, told them what we knew, kept it factual, no dramatics. The officer took a report and said if she set foot on the property again we could make it trespassing. I changed the code again and added a second camera on the side yard. The universe must have decided that was enough drama because 3 days later, Maddie woke me up at 4 a.m. with, "Dad, I think my water broke." I have not moved that fast since high school basketball. Doug was asleep on the sectional. He shot straight up like a cartoon. We grabbed the hospital bag, towels, my phone charger, and I backed the car into the drive so fast I basically invented a new parking technique. It had snowed a dusting overnight, just enough to make every turn feel like a test. I drove, Doug called the OB, and Maddie squeezed my forearm the entire ride. Every time I hit a pothole I apologized out loud to the entire future of our family. It wasn't a drill. She labored all day. Doug held one leg, I held the other hand, and I will not be pretending I am tough. I cried when they handed her the baby. He's small but strong, loud right out of the gate, a head full of dark hair that stands up like he was electrocuted. I'm not sharing his name, but it's solid, a family name from Doug's side that also happens to be the name of the first dog I ever had, which we all laughed about very hard at 3 in the morning. I told Maddie, well, he'll learn to come when he's called. Doug had a final the next day. He wanted to skip it. I told him, absolutely not, go write the exam and come straight back, I'd sit with Maddie and the baby. He went, came back with a 92, and then immediately fell asleep in the chair with the baby on his chest, both of them open-mouthed like twins. The nurse tucked a blanket over both of them and gave me a look like, you're in it now, Grandpa. She wasn't wrong. Maddie's mom showed up at the hospital on day 2. I braced for fireworks. Instead, she came in quiet. She stood at the foot of the bed and asked if she could hold him. Maddie hesitated and then said yes. Her mom started crying the second he was in her arms. She apologized to Maddie, not a big speech, nothing polished. Just I handled it wrong and I'm sorry. She told me thank you without meeting my eyes for longer than a second. She didn't stay long. It wasn't a fix-all, but it was human, and it mattered to Maddie. Later, alone, Maddie told me she's not moving back there, she's not rewriting history, but she doesn't want to slam every door forever. I told her I'd support whatever boundaries she set. We brought the baby home 2 days later. The house feels different. Louder, obviously, but also, lighter. The tension that had been living in the corners is gone. I've got the first shift, 4 a.m. to 7 a.m., because I'm up anyway. I make coffee, do dishes one-handed, hum old songs I haven't thought about in years, and walk laps around the kitchen island with him draped over my shoulder like a warm cat. Doug does the midnight to 4 because he's 20 and can sleep like the dead between. Maddie sleeps when the baby sleeps because now she actually listens to other mothers instead of trying to be a superhero. The plants, this is going to sound corny, but one of the little pings that looked absolutely cooked pushed out a tiny new leaf the morning we got home. Maddie noticed it before she noticed the new bassinet by the couch. She laughed for the first time in weeks. We found a nursery 2 towns over that specializes in carnivores. The owner is an older guy with a ponytail who took one look at Maddie's phone pictures and said, "Miracle they aren't dust," and then told us exactly how to flush out what he suspected happened. He wouldn't take my money for the 2 cuttings he sent us home with. Consider it a housewarming present for the bug eaters, he said. They're on the windowsill now, the baby under them, like a weird little terrarium of second chances. I haven't heard from Vera. She did drop off a fabric storage bin on the porch with a couple of tea towels I gave her. She didn't stay. I put the bin in the garage and let the officer know the time. I'm not interested in poking that bear. The code is changed, the cameras are up, and we're moving forward. I'd planned to be hands-off with day-to-day baby stuff, but I find myself inventing reasons to be hands-on. I built a changing table with soft close drawers. I installed blackout curtains in both rooms. I'm teaching Doug to make my grandmother's chicken soup because he keeps asking for that magic stuff at 3 in the morning. Maddie finally admitted she's going to take spring off without me or anyone else twisting her arm. She's meeting with an advisor to map summer and fall. Doug's on track to finish in May. He's up feeding at 2 a.m. and then out the door at 7 for clinicals with dried spit up on his collar, and he doesn't even complain. He looks 14 when he sleeps, and about 35 when he's up burping. Update 4. 2 weeks into newborn life, when I'd finally learned how to make a bottle in the dark without looking and could tell the difference between I'm hungry and my sock is crooked cries, our doorbell rang at 9:13 a.m. on a Tuesday. A woman with a badge, clipboard, and the kind of calm voice you practice in a mirror introduced herself and said she was there because of an anonymous report about unsafe sleeping arrangements and chemicals accessible. Maddie went white in the face and Doug stopped breathing like he thought not inhaling would help. I asked if she'd like coffee. She said no, but thank you, and asked if she could take a look around. I'm not a yeller. I'm a labels and shelves guy, so I told her yes, of course, and I walked her through like I was giving a tour of a model home called Responsible Decisions. Bassinet at the right height by Maddie's bed with the mattress tag still on it because I forgot to cut it, fitted sheet tight enough to play a note on. No loose blankets. The second crib downstairs where Doug sleeps on his nights, with the slats measured because I actually measured them with a tape measure when I put it together like a lunatic. Baby monitor cameras with the privacy shutter you click shut when not in use. Outlets covered. Medicines in a locking toolbox on the laundry room shelf because I had the toolbox and a padlock and suddenly felt very good about both. I showed her the baby's formula, the appointment card on the fridge, the whiteboard with feedings and diapers, and the day I got cocky and drew a little gold star next to 3-hour stretch like I was awarding him a medal. She looked at the plants and asked, "What are those?" And Maddie said, "Carnivorous plants," and the woman nodded slowly like that was the most normal sentence she'd ever heard at work. We got to the part about chemicals accessible. I told her we had a police report on file about a former household member being on the property at night, and that after that, I moved every fertilizer, detergent, and paint can into the locked shed and put a second lock on the side gate. I pulled out my phone and showed her the footage, the timestamps, the new code log, the second camera feed watching the rain barrels. I kept my mouth shut about anything that sounded like guessing. I stuck to what I could hand over. She took notes. She was kind to Maddie in a way that made my throat tighten. She asked 100 small questions, the kind that feel ridiculous if you're not in it. Where do you put him when you shower? Who else has a key? Do you have a thermometer? What do you do if the power goes out? And we answered them because we had answers. She said, I can't tell you who called, but I can tell you a lot of our anonymous reports come right after a breakup. We have to check. You're doing what you should be doing. Then she asked if we had any firearms in the home. I said no, the only thing I shoot is drywall anchor holes too big and then I have to pretend I meant to do it that way. She laughed exactly once. She left her card and said she'd write it up and likely close it unless something else came in. Maddie went into the bathroom and cried the kind of cry that's all shoulders, and then came out and fed the baby like a pro because that's what you do. I thought that was our quota for adrenaline for the week. The next night a wet snow blew in sideways and took the power out at 1:07 a.m. I know that time because every UPS in the house beeped like we'd summoned a spaceship. The house went quiet in a way you only notice when there's a small person asleep whose heat system is 9 pounds with a half-charged belly. I did the math on my feet, no furnace fan, no stove. I started the fireplace, then remembered the fireplace is decorative, which will make you feel very dumb very fast. I pulled the heavy drapes, closed the doors to the kitchen and living area to shrink the house down to 2 rooms, and rolled up towels under the cracks like it was a hurricane. I pulled the battery CO detector off the hallway and put it on the credenza, press test. Doug came up from the basement with a blanket, hair standing up like the baby's. We did skin to skin, 3 of us taking turns like a relay team. I boiled water on the grill outside in my boots and warmed bottles by holding the mug in my hoodie like a weird marsupial. The baby slept like he was the person who caused the outage. At 2:20 a.m., my across-the-street neighbor, retired electrician, knows everybody's breaker panel by sight, saw our house blacked out and knocked on the door with a floodlight strapped to his head. I've got a 5K generator humming, he said. You want a line? He meant an extension cord, and I swear to you I have never loved an orange cable more. We ran a 12 gauge across the street like the world's least subtle booby trap, and I plugged in one space heater in the fridge and the baby's sound machine. I did the amperage math twice out loud to nobody because saying it makes it true. The living room ticked up 2 degrees in 20 minutes. It felt like a literal miracle. My neighbor went back, waved his beanie, and then I watched him from the window sit on his porch with a thermos like a lighthouse keeper. Around sunrise I made chicken soup on the grill, which is as chaotic as it sounds and somehow tasted better. Doug took the baby for the dawn shift and did laps, humming something offbeat that I realized was the theme from some medical show. The power came back with a groan at 8:03, and the heater kicked on like it was offended we'd made do without it. Maddie came out holding the baby and laughed at the sight of 2 grown men fist bumping over a house that sounded like a slot machine paying out, beeps, hums, everything rebooting. We took down the cord and coiled it, and I baked my neighbor a banana bread out of pure gratitude and because my mother raised me right. At 10, when I finally sat down with coffee that wasn't boiled in a wind tunnel, my phone lit up with a voicemail from the officer we'd made the earlier report with. He said he'd gone ahead and delivered a formal no trespass notice to Vera on our behalf. He kept it boring and professional, which is exactly what I want my life to be now. He said if she comes back, call, don't engage. I stared at my living room, which looked like a baby's RS had collided with a hardware store, and thought about how quickly you can make a little ecosystem where the baby stays warm, the plants don't die, and the adults take deep breaths and do the next thing. The plants, by the way, because apparently the universe likes a theme, are confusing me. One of the sundews that had gone from bright to brown is sticky again, little drops beating up like it's sweating sugar. The older guy at the carnivorous nursery emailed Maddie a PDF with gross photos and told her to flush again in 2 weeks with rain or distilled water and to gently top dress with long fiber sphagnum, not the dyed green craft junk, the wet sheep looking stuff. I found 3 bags in the garage because apparently I've been a bog gardener in my heart this whole time. We did it. The window looks like a tiny swamp and I have never rooted for a plant like I'm rooting for those weird little mouths. Doug had his last big practical exam on Friday. He went in on 4 hours of sleep and a lecture from me about hand hygiene that I delivered like a monologue even though he absolutely knows how to wash his hands. He texted me a picture after, him in scrubs, sweat marked down the front from the baby sleeping on him that morning, grin so big it broke his face, passed my skills check and then preceptor said to send my resume to the nurse manager. That night, like the world wanted to give us a nice end to a week of feeling like we were in a storm literally and otherwise, Doug got an email at 11:08 p.m. from the hospital where he's been doing clinicals. It's one of those pending graduation/NCLEX, would you be interested in a position things that is not a job yet but it is a door cracked open. He didn't even try to play it cool. He handed me his phone and said, do I say yes now or do I say yes in an hour? I said, say yes now and then go change the diaper, hotshot. Maddie's mom came by in the daylight this time, with a grocery bag full of frozen meals she'd made and a baby hat she knitted that is tragically adorable. She did not linger. She did not try to rewrite anything. She kissed Maddie's forehead and said, call me if you want me to hold him while you shower. After she left, Maddie stared at the hat and said, I might, like it was a new language, and then put it on the baby's head and he looked like a gnome hired to supervise us. I don't have some big lesson to tack onto this. The crazy thing is it's all small things stacked on top of each other. The knock on the door you don't want, the generator cord that hums, the plant leaf that decides not to give up, the email that shows up at 11. I built a pegboard over the changing table because I kept misplacing the tiny nail clippers and I was starting to feel personally hunted by them. I labeled baskets. I installed a latch on the basement door up high and added another smoke detector even though the ones we had were fine. I keep waking up at 4 even when it's not my shift, and I go out and pour water through a pitcher of coffee grounds and then put my hand over the baby's back to feel that slow rhythm of breathing that is the only metronome I care about anymore. If I'm honest, the house feels like itself again, just with more laundry and better soundtrack. The carnivores glisten in the window over the bassinet like little watchmen. The code on the door works. The cameras blink their stupid blue LEDs at me. The whiteboard has a coffee ring on it because I set my mug down too hard when the doorbell rang, and I haven't wiped it off on purpose. It's a marker of the moment we got through. Update 5. The pediatrician weighed him at 9:06 a.m. and frowned in the kind way, the way they teach you not to let your eyebrows do too much. He dropped a little more than she liked. Nothing dramatic, but enough for, I want you to see the ENT down the hall today if they can squeeze you. They could. The ENT was one of those guys who looks like he was born in a lab coat and sneakers. He gloved up, lifted that tiny tongue with a little metal tool, and said, "Yep, posterior tie." Explains the blister on mom's side and the clicking. Maddie looked like she'd been handed a cheat code. They offered to clip it then and there. They swaddled him like a burrito, put sugar water on a pacifier, and did the fastest, least rock and roll sounding snip in history. He cried like he was auditioning for a tragedy for 12 seconds and then latched like he'd been smug about it this whole time. Maddie cried harder than he did. Doug took a video of exactly nothing, mostly his own shoes, and I stood there with my hands and fists inside my sleeves like that could keep everybody from feeling anything bad ever again. We walked out with a sheet of exercises that read like tongue yoga. I bought milkshakes on the way home because my brain filed oral surgery under milkshakes, and the woman at the drive-thru told me congratulations twice for no reason and it still mattered. On the way back, at the longest red light in the Western Hemisphere, a delivery van tapped us from behind hard enough to thump but not enough to set off the airbags. It was slush on asphalt stupid, the kind where everyone's going 7 miles an hour and still can't stop. I said, "Nobody moves," and then immediately stepped out and waved my arms like a traffic cop who'd read the manual once. The driver was mortified. Young guy, hands shaking, the whole "I'm so sorry" chorus. I dialed 911 and used the exact words the firefighter taught me: minor collision, infant in car, wanna check. Fire showed up before I put my phone back in my pocket. It was our same guy from the car seat inspection and he pointed at Doug and said, "Seat belt lock off, right?" Like he was making a joke just for him. He checked the baby with gloved hands and a face I trusted more than I trusted my own, and he checked the car seat shell and base and gave me that professional frown again. "Replace it," he said. "Low speed or not, manufacturer says so." The delivery company's supervisor came and did the "we'll take care of it" speech and, shockingly, did. By 4 p.m., I had an email from them offering to reimburse the seat if I sent a receipt. My across-the-street neighbor's granddaughter outgrew her seat last month and they had one still in box in a closet like they were waiting for a very specific favor to pay back. We checked the expiration date like we were TSA, installed it under the eye of the same firefighter who happened to be off shift and drinking coffee in our driveway, and I have never loved click-in click-out engineering so much in my life. The CPS letter came the next day, plain envelope, closed case, no further action, nice neat signature, and I put it in a plastic sleeve like a baseball card and filed it under house documents because apparently that's who I am now. Same mail drop included a court date notice for the no trespass order formalizing into a year-long no contact. I wore a jacket that doesn't show baby spit. The courtroom lighting was a crime in and of itself. Vera looked past me in that way where your eyes skate over a person like they're a smudge on glass. I didn't say anything I couldn't back up. I handed over the clip, the report number, the screenshots of my code changes, the printout from the nursery guy about flushing contaminated media because I am now the guy who brings homework to court. The judge was all business. He didn't ask me how I felt. He didn't ask her why. He said the words on the paper, stamped it, and told me to keep a copy in the house and one in the car. I walked out into the sun and felt the weird mix of being grateful and exhausted that comes with official boredom, my favorite kind. Maddie's mom came over and stayed longer than 10 minutes. She held him while Maddie showered and then sat at the table and folded the kind of tiny laundry that turns into origami when you're not looking. She brought a thermos of soup that smelled like the first week we brought Maddie home from the hospital 18 years ago, which is a memory I didn't expect to have show up in my kitchen like a person. They talked about stitches and nipple shields and the weird loneliness of 3 a.m. without once stepping on the landmines I was braced for. When she left, she said, "Text me next Tuesday, I'm free in the afternoon," and Maddie said, "Okay," and then stared at me like she'd borrowed somebody else's voice. I told her I was proud of her for every part of that sentence. Doug got a formal conditional offer from the hospital he's been doing clinicals at. It's real deal, pending the degree and the licensing exam and all the needles they like to stick you with to prove you can be around vulnerable people without being Typhoid Mary. He needed a TB test, a flu shot, a Tdap, a fit test for N95s, and a urine drug screen that he's stressed about for exactly no reason other than he is Doug. I drove him because my idea of a party now is sitting in a medical building lobby with a sleeping baby and a vending machine coffee that tastes like it was brewed in 1998. He came out with a tiny red mark on each arm and a grin. I told him he looked like a porcupine who made poor choices. He did the fit test and came back saying, "They put me in a hood and sprayed bananas?" Which is, apparently, a thing. We celebrated by buying a pack of 12 black socks because I have seen the hamper and I know what you go through when you're a nurse. The plants, because the universe likes a subplot, are on their comeback tour. The sundews look like they're wearing jewelry. The nursery guy with the ponytail sent Maddie an email that said, "Repotting night, you coming?" Like she's in a club, which, in a way, she is. We went. It was in the back of his greenhouse, all humid air and folding chairs and people named things like Ed and Min who trade cuttings like baseball cards. Maddie brought one of the sad pings in a yogurt cup and came home with a fat little thing labeled Aphrodite and an unsolicited lecture on fungus gnats that made me want to fumigate the zip code. I installed a grow light over the kitchen window ledge because I am not someone who does things halfway. It's on a timer. It automates. The baby sleeps under its pink glow like a tiny radish. I pretended not to notice Maddie standing there at 11:50 p.m. watching a leaf move like it was a TV show. I took the generator situation from Orange Court across the street to we live in a place the fire marshal would not shake his head at. My neighbor and I installed an interlock kit on the panel with his buddy from the retirees electrician Coffee Klatch supervising for donuts. We shut the main, labeled every breaker like I was writing a dissertation, and tested the whole thing with a little portable generator I bought that will keep the heat fan, the fridge, and the sound machine from deciding our moods. The first time the furnace cycled on under generator power I got misty-eyed like I was at a graduation. I sent my neighbor's wife home with lasagna and a carnivorous plant cutting because apparently that's our barter economy now. There was a blowout. There's always a blowout. I'm not going to give you poetry about it except to say physics is not on your side when diaper meets onesie. I learned the avocado method, down over the shoulders, and retired a onesie with honor. Doug held the baby in the sink and yelled, "He's slippery." Like he was fighting a trout. I put the diaper cream on like frosting. We survived. The washing machine earned whatever it costs per cycle and then some. The first real smile happened at 5:41 a.m., when it was my shift and nobody but me saw it. It was probably gas. It still took me out at the knees. I woke up Maddie anyway and told her, and she said, "I believe you," in a voice that told me she was believing for both of us. The whiteboard got a new column called wins because I had a dry erase marker in my hand and nowhere else to put that feeling. Under it, 2-ounce gain, tongue yoga champion, slept on his back without doing starfish panic, no cry car seat install, twice, email subject line, offer pending. There was one more knock I didn't want, a second anonymous report, this time about excessive noise at night, which made me laugh for the first time in one of those visits, because yes, there is a baby, and yes, he communicates at night. Same caseworker. Same calm. She took one look at the interlock kit, the lock shed, the thermometer, the space heater still in a box with a tag that says for emergencies only, and asked if she could put us on a list for a free pack and play her office had gotten donated because they like to hand them to families who are actually using them for exactly what the instructions say. I said yes even though we're set, and we gave it to a woman in Doug's program who's due next month and living in student housing with a roommate. I drove it over myself, handed her the folded rectangle with the tag still on, and she cried the same shoulder cry Maddie did after the first visit. It felt like a circle closing. I don't know if we're in the clear, not in the cosmic sense, but the house is a machine that runs on white noise and coffee and whatever the baby decides to do next. Doug studies with flashcards at the kitchen table at 2 a.m. while bouncing on a yoga ball like a very sweaty metronome. He'll read the question out loud, and sometimes I answer and sometimes I don't, and sometimes the baby answers with a burp that is at least a B-. Maddie will come out of the bedroom with hair and a knot and the look of someone who owns both her exhaustion and her joy. I add one more label to one more basket because if control is a myth, it's a pretty comforting one when it's spelled in black marker. The plants glisten like they know a secret. The door code works. The cameras blink their dumb blue. The court paper lives in the glove compartment like an amulet. The generator hums when I ask it to hum, and he makes a sound like a squeaky hinge when he sleeps, and I have never liked the sound of a hinge more.